Yes. It's not me. It might be this thing. Okay. Good afternoon. All ready? Okay. President Leah Oliveri is calling this meeting to order. Sorry, I'm reading something. Ms. Huerta, would you please call the roll?
President Leah Oliveri.
Present.
Vice President Alan Wilson.
Here.
Secretary Diana Summers.
Here.
Mark LaRue.
Present.
Jesus Jimenez.
Present.
Robert Thames.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum of the board present to conduct the meeting.
And just as a note for those that y'all don't know, very quickly, Eric Evans got a new job in Denver, and he was like gone in 10 days. So he has resigned from the board, and I am told that there will be now 3 vacancies coming up for the Type A, Type B board. The council will make the appointments in September, and they will begin to serve October. So I encourage y'all, if you know anybody that you think should be sitting up here, Ms. Huerta will be putting out information on how to apply shortly.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any excused absences. Is there anybody here who would like to make a public comment? No? All right, I don't see any. Ms. Huerta, have you received any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. With that, let's go to the financial reports.
We need to approve the minutes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss those? Thank you very much. We have the minutes before us of May 20th. Mr. Thames, second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The minutes have carried. The financial report.
Yes, I will be Heather Hurlbert, Assistant City Manager.
They're having a humming noise up here. Do you know what's causing that?
Our understanding it's the AC unit that's making that noise.
So we have a choice. Do you want them to turn it off? No, okay.
Pretty good with the humming.
It'll be white noise in a minute. All right, with that, I'm sorry, Ms. Holbert, would you please?
It's okay. Heather Hurlbert, Assistant City Manager. So we'll be going over the financial statements for the 7 months ended April 30th, 2024. We'll need to get the presentation brought up.
You don't have a? Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. I feel like we should be playing like the Jeopardy tune or something right now. There it goes. Okay. And control room, I will need you to advance slides for me, please. Next slide. Okay. So for the financial position for the 7 months ended April 30th, 2024, the combined funds began the year with a $14.5 million fund balance. Revenues to date are 5.7, almost $5.8 million. Expenditures year to date are a little over $1 million, with an ending fund balance as of April 30th for the 3 combined funds of $19.2 million. So below that, you see the funds broken out by the 3 different uses, which is the affordable housing, the economic development, and the streets. And we'll go into more detail on those as we go through. Next slide, please. So looking at the expenditures as of April 30th, 2024, within affordable housing, it's primarily been the administrative costs transfers to the general fund. And economic development, the $698,000 was related to all of our small business contracts that we have. The major and business incentives was $203,000 that was paid out. The REDC contract at $62.5 thousand that was been paid out. Administration of $5,000, along with the transfers to the general fund. So a little over $1 million been spent out of the economic development fund. And then the streets has been primarily the administration, and we're waiting for that balance to build, and then those funds will be transferred. Next slide, please. So then going into the affordable housing, we look at these cash flows. So estimated revenues, so remember as a reminder, the affordable housing receives up to $500,000 each year from the sales tax. And so the estimated revenue is $556,000. That does reflect interest. We did have commitments for $1 million, but we are not going to be using that program right now. And so we'll be talking about future uses. Administrative expenses about $23,000, leaving an estimated fund balance of 1.8 or 2.8 with you release that $1 million commitment there. Next slide, please. Then looking at economic development, estimated revenue in this fund is 4.7, almost $4.8 million. Current and future incentives paid out is $1.1 million. The administrative expenses of $334,000, which leaves an estimated fund balance at the end of the year of 15.3. Down below, you will see the different commitments that are against this fund. We do have the commitment with the South Texas Botanical Gardens, which we are hopeful will be paid out this year. The next sports company for the soccer field complex project, the TAMU-CC unmanned aircraft systems, which that one we feel like will be paid out in full by fiscal year 25. The small business contracts, which are those ones with Del Mar and TAMU-CC. The South Texas Military Housing, that was for the Sinatra House. We're still working on the agreement for that. We feel like that will be paid out in fiscal year 25. And then the $2 million for the Homewood Suites, which will be paid out over a 5-year period once that project is completed. Next slide, please.
So just a question going back to
Sure.
the Botanical Gardens while
Yes.
we're there. Could you just give us have they started work on that project now?
I believe so. I believe everything is completed with everything was completed with the Texas Department of Wildlife grant, and I believe that they have started work on that.
Okay.
We can provide you an update at the next at the July
Even just
meeting.
a little written one is
Sure.
fine. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Next slide, please. And then looking at our streets, like I said, we do have the project of the $4.3 million that will be transferred. We're waiting for fund balance to build, and then we'll be transferring that out over to the CIP fund. Next slide, please. Then looking at our collections, so we are 7 months into the fiscal year. The budget for sales tax collections was $8.895 million. To date, we've collected $5.3 million, which is a little bit about $100,000 over what was budgeted. Again, we always budget conservatively, and so an overage in this area is always good. So that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Any idea why? I mean, it's still positive, don't get me wrong, but it looked like we had a little trend downward in April on the sales tax compared to the other months.
So that is something that, I mean, actually across the state, there is a downward trend in sales tax collections with the retail environment cooling a little bit.
Yeah.
We actually, there are a lot of other municipalities that actually have negative trends right now. We are seeing a lot more softening in the market. Corpus has been fortunate in the fact that we have not dipped below, and so we are still meeting our budget expectations.
Great, thank you. Any other questions of anyone? Okay, if not, we have one agenda item. It's and this is Type B Corporation. There's a motion authorizing an amendment to the Small Business Incentives Agreement between the Corpus Christi B Corporation and Del Mar College, which would be increasing the amount of their internship program. And I believe Randy Alminger from the CCREDC is here to speak about that.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam President, board members. Randy Alminger, Compliance Officer with the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation. So yes, that item before you is a Request to increase the amount not to exceed $130,000. The internship program has really taken some major strides. If you look in the board packet there in the spring semester, they're up to about $61,000 across almost 20 different industries with almost 30 different companies. Also, you'll see that they've got about, I think, 4 interns converted to full-time equivalents in the spring semester. As you know, this is a calendar year program, so they still have the summer and the fall at current state. If they continue with the $115,000, they'll be over, so that's why the request for an additional $15,000. And then for FY 25, they'll look to be at that same amount, $130,000 as well. Any questions from the board?
Any comments by any of the board members?
Randy, I've forgotten your name. Before COVID-19, they were getting $150,000, right?
Yes.
And because of that, they slowed down. Now they're coming back up, so I'll make a motion to go ahead and... Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the increase by $15,000 to get them up to not to exceed $130,000. Did you have a comment, Miss?
I just wanted to mention, we've asked for the information on where these interns were being placed, what industries, bringing in new companies, bringing in new industries, and the information that was provided to us is exactly what we've been asking for. And I just was thrilled to see the diversification and expansion and where this program is reaching to. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
And what kind of examples, what struck you? Just for
Well, we got this chart that we've had 12 new different employers that were added to the program. I think we were seeing some kind of repeat employers year over year that were participating in this, so I'm glad to see that expansion. I'm also thrilled to see the accounting, as someone with an accounting background, I'm thrilled to see that industry being well represented on here, but also the HVAC program. It's very much in demand as being in South Texas, so great work on that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any comments? Thank you. And so we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Same sign. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Let's turn to some presentation items. I think there's a Ritz Theater status update.
Yes, we have Cheryl Voltsmeyer-Rios with the
Okay.
Ritz Theater. So this project was approved back in October of 2023, and she wanted to give an update. This was that Texas Historical Commission
Great.
matching grant to weather seal tight the building. So
Thank you.
Do I do this?
just tell them this.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm excited to be here to give our update, Madam President and the board. It's been a very busy last year, I have to say. I came on in November of 2022 and hit the ground running. We have been very busy with fundraising and building our board. I want to first thank the Type B board for awarding us the $230,000 for the matching grant from Texas Historical Commission. And I want to thank Randy and Mike also for the guidance through this process. It's a big process, and so, but very rewarding when done right. Some people don't know who the Ritz Theater are, and I know we have an audience here, but we are a nonprofit organization, and we are pushing through the revitalization and rehabilitation of the Ritz Theater that sits centrally in the downtown Corpus Christi area. It's been around for quite some time. It's been a long project, but when I came on, I was the first paid employee to come on board, and previous to that, we had very passionate volunteers on the board of directors really trying to make it happen. A lot of people have asked why it's taken so long. Well, when you have families running and being a part of a nonprofit, they have their own businesses that they're operating, their families, and so it's taken a while, but I do give kudos and lots of applause to the board of directors that were on hand and are still on hand from keeping the building from getting scraped. A lot of people think that historic buildings need to be dozed, and that's just not necessarily the case with our cities. A lot of cities do that. We are not going to do that. So what we have found with the League of Historic American Theaters, that when we have our historic buildings rehabilitated and preserved, it does add an amenity, it adds interest, it adds something unique to a city and a town. And so we have a lot of people that actually come to our cities looking for diverse things to do. And what we will have at the Ritz Theater is a state-of-the-art multi-purpose venue that will house theater, dance, concerts, conferences, rentals, and as you'll see later, we have some concept drawings that we'd like to show. So the history started when CC Patch was formed in 2006, and as you can see, it's passed through different phases since then until now. We have OTJ Architects out of Washington, D.C., who are familiar and experienced with restoration and rehabilitation of historic theaters. We were very proud to have them. They're one of the best in the United States, and they have a team underneath them that are diverse as well, from structural engineers, theatrical engineers, historic paint and plaster preservation, and so we're really excited to have them on our team. One of the things that our initiatives are is rehabilitating the Ritz Theater and bringing it back to, bringing it to a state-of-the-art. At the time when it was open, it was state-of-the-art for that time, but we are going to bring it back to an operating venue. We are creating a dynamic and diverse arts education program right now. We feel that that is one of the things that we can do before the doors ever open. So we are going to partner with Texas A&M. We've reached out to the executive director at the Antonio E. Garcia Center. We will be taking theatrical arts over there along with vocal. So we're really excited about that. It hits a demographic that we are identifying as number one, an underserved area, but we are reaching out to a community that does not have access to the arts. We think that's a very important component for our organization, and actually it's essential to have for our community. Another thing that we will be in the future putting together is artist nurturing program. We will be reaching out prior to the doors opening, and really soon, within the next month and a half, is reaching into our community and talking to the local artists to find out what their needs are. We have a really beautiful concept coming with this package, with not only rehabilitating the historic theater, but also a vision of an addition in the adjacent parking lot, which will house a secondary theater, a restaurant venue, executive offices and arts education offices, and a rooftop venue that'll be rental space for different events such as weddings, receptions, quinceañeras, and other things like that. So some of the milestones over the last year and a half are, number one is that we're in the rehabilitation efforts right now, which is really exciting. But what we established was a Ritz Founders Circle. Mayor Guajardo really pushed this for us in the beginning to help us get seed funding under our belt so we could move forward with being able to pay the architects, bring on a capital campaign fundraiser, which we have, Susan Palmer from Westport Group out of the East Coast. We're really excited to have her. She's actually had a feasibility study and put in place, and we did a feasibility study over the last few months, finding that our community is ready for something like this. The capacity is there for our community to be able to support a project like this, not only from our community, but also finding that our state and local government is on board to help us, and also looking and seeking for tax credit initiatives. So one of the next things that we will be working on is our master planning. So conceptual designs and schematics are in the works. We'll be meeting with OTJ soon. One of the I guess, dialogue that we did have with Type B and the EDC was when we start getting the refund and the reimbursement from Texas Historical Commission, that funding will go towards schematics and construction drawings. As you know, when we receive the 230 back, that does not cover the total spans of what that cost is. So we are doing fundraising right now and looking at grants that will help us with that cost. We'll also be doing a cost analysis, which we know that we did a soft cost analysis through OTJ, which is familiar with this size of project in a community such as ours. And so we do know that when we have the schematics created and the construction documents in place and the bids coming in from the contractors, that we will know more of like exactly what those costs will. Of course, they'll fluctuate as we go. So we did complete the Harvey Grant scope of work. Of course, we completed the feasibility study, as I said. OTJ is hired. We will be working on the next steps as we just talked about. So OTJ Architects, if you're not familiar, rehabilitated the Majestic Theater in San Antonio. If you've been there, you know how beautiful that is. That is what the Ritz Theater will look like, except on a smaller scale. They're 3 times bigger than we are. They used several engineering contractors from across the United States. Lundy Frankie out of San Antonio will be on our project. Schuler Shook out of the East Coast is theatrical engineering, and Evergreen Architects out of New York City will be doing the historic plaster and paint rehabilitation. So one of the things we did talk about in the past, which I'd like to retouch on, is the rehabilitation process. Since it's such a hard component to accomplish with preservation, we're working with Texas Historical Commission, and one of the things that they guided us through is the rehabilitation process as opposed to a preservation. Rehabilitation what we'll be able to do is pick a poignant time in the theater's lifespan and aim towards what those the architectural accents inside look like. And so what we've done with OTJ is followed their guidance as well, and we're heading in the rehabilitation state. This is the current interior of the Ritz Theater, and as you can see, there's deterioration from water damage, from water coming in through the roof, which is now repaired. Some of the repairs that we did do, this is the front facade of the Ritz Theater. There were holes in there, water was coming in with rain, so we've been able to seal that, and as you can see from the left, you got the full facade, and then if you see the dark holes on the, starting from left to right, you can see the dark holes that are there from the old marquee. That's where water was penetrating, and then they came in with elastomeric product to fill in the holes to make sure we don't have any water coming through the walls. Here again, we've got on the north side, on the parking lot side, which has been repaired. These are all temporary fixes to keep the water from going in. The great thing about this is that we do not have water coming into the theater. We'll see what this week shows. I'll be paying a visit in the next few days to see where we are with leakage, but pretty much it's dry inside, which is nice. You can smell a difference in there. The moisture is down. We had some heaters in there back in the spring drying it out. This is the rooftop area on the right side in the fly loft. They were able to seal it up with plywood for now. All of this will be redone, of course, when OTJ comes in with their design concepts and we start our construction. These are the terracotta caps. We weren't able to get the terracotta caps made. They would take about 6 months to be made, and we didn't have that time frame to work on because the final time of our scope was to be finished by March 31st. So that's what we worked on, and those, of course, the metals, well, the steel caps will be coming off when we start construction. And as I've talked about before, and as we know, that when we have new things coming into our communities, they create a positive economic impact. We're excited about creating jobs, number one, prior to opening the doors, but also once we open up the doors, the statistics from the League of Historic American Theaters show that on a community our size, we will create full-time jobs, around 177 rotating jobs throughout the building. That could go from back of the house, front of the house, maintenance, any kind of revenue and contract coming in to help with events inside the center and increasing property values in our downtown area. So these are the concept drawings. I have brought 2 initial ones. This will be the front facade of the Ritz Theater once we're reopened. And as you can see to the right, this is the new addition that our vision is, a performing arts center, multi-purpose venue with an extra theater, black box theater. It's pretty amazing what it'll look like. I think it's a game changer for our downtown area and what it's going to bring to Corpus Christi. We've had great feedback, not only from Corpus Christi residents, but also residents in Odom and Kingsville, Rockport. These are all towns that will be able to come and enjoy the venue and also increase our tax our revenues here in the city. Does anybody have any questions?
So as I recall, the funding we provided, it was for you to front load the cost associated with the Texas Historical Grant and the feasibility study.
Correct.
In that, given that, where would you say percentage-wise you are in terms of completing what will be then submitted to THC for to secure the funds from them?
So we're finished, and the review.
Totally finished, okay.
Yes, with that scope of work.
And so have you got the
Not
funds?
yet. It takes we've noticed when we've submitted in the past few months, it takes about a month and a half to receive. I did submit our report last week, and so it's under review, and I've already received an email back from Lisa Hart, who's with THC. We're missing 2 documents. She wants me to organize some imagery for her and name them, and that's it.
So
we're
it's
done.
imminent?
It's
that you
imminent.
will have that
Yes.
available to
Correct.
begin the next stage?
Correct. And when that's back, then we'll start working on our schematics and our construction documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving right along.
All right.
Our next item is discussion on Type B Affordable Housing Project funding options.
Yeah, we have Dia McGinn here with us. This is something that the board had asked for. We've had some challenges with getting programs for the affordable housing money. And so we've worked with Housing and Planning, and I think we've got some great potential projects that we can move forward with. So, Dan?
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam President, board members. Daniel McGinn, Director with the Planning and Community Development Department. Also with me, Jennifer Buxton. She's our Assistant Director with our group. And just some background, our groups combined about a year ago, so our planning group is now working very closely within our housing proposals and projects that are going through the city. So just to give you a little background on how we've kind of come together. Again, yes, we're just presenting some options here as far as how we could utilize affordable housing dollars. One of the first options that we kind of wanted to present to the board, we have a infill project that we've been working on for about the last 9 to 10 months. It's within it's the Lamar Elementary School neighborhood location. This property was gifted to the city by the Ed Rochelle Foundation. They had purchased the old school and about 50 lots within the immediate area. And so they gifted us that property. And we were looking at, as we got into it, we knew obviously infill, older neighborhoods, some of the infrastructure concerns, a little bit older systems and that and such that would be in place here. And so that was one of the things that we would like to present here to the board. But just a little bit of background on that process for this infill program or this project we have been working on. So we did a request for interest for developers back in August. And that closed out in September, and we had 5 different developers. We had 1 multifamily developer and then 4 single-family developers. And so in December, we closed, or we have a contract with the larger site where the school was. That included some lots across Mary Street and the Mary Street right-of-way. That is the Palms at Morris. And so they're right now going through the tax credit process through the state. So we won't know if that project gets approved. It's looking very good, but that decision will be made in July. And if approved, that would be for 72 senior housing units. And so we continued, during that process, we continued to work with the 4 single-family developers. And we recently, in June, got that approved with our council where we kind of split those lots up, and I can show you how those are dispersed here on the next slide, but that could lead to about 40 to 45 single-family units within the same neighborhood between Habitat, Thanksgiving Homes, Come Dream, Come Build, and DSW Homes. Those were the 4 that submitted. Here's a look at that neighborhood. The site in the middle is the proposed apartment project. You can see how Mary Street was closed. This neighborhood had great connectivity, so the closure of Mary Street doesn't pose too many issues. This area is also, it's got great access to a park and the Garcia Arts Center. Agnes, just to the north, 19th Street has a bus service on there, so they have a bus stop right there. Medical just to the south on Morgan. There's a clinic there, and of course, Spa and Shoreline's not very far either for other additional medical. And so you can kind of see the distribution here. The green lots are Habitat, yellow, Come Dream, Come Build. DSW is the orange, and Thanksgiving would be the blue. And the lighter and the darker just means kind of a phase 1, and then phase 2 would be the lighter. And we've set it up where it's a performance base, so they have to perform in that first phase in order to get the phase 2 lots. If they don't, then those lots go back into a pool and get distributed that way.
Could you go back? I didn't write down quick enough the number of per, one more, I think. Oh, there it is at the bottom, 14, 10 to 12 for Habitat.
Yeah, the lots are, some of them are narrow, and so they're going to be, some are going to be replatting, some are going to, like the Thanksgiving Homes can do a little bit more because they have a product that works on a 25-foot lot. They can do a 2-story, and so some of the builders don't necessarily have that. So
okay, thank you.
Okay, so as we were kind of looking at the site, we did mention kind of the infrastructure needs. We knew some of the lines were older, and so one of the things that we want the board to consider for this area in particular is the wastewater infrastructure. We're proposing the lines in yellow, and this system all flows to the Broadway plant, so and these yellow lines kind of flow south and east under Crosstown, and eventually it makes its way to the Broadway treatment plant. And you can see the age of some of the lines. The north-south lines are 1940, and then the more concerning line would be the Moore Street, which goes back to 1926. And so we worked with CCW. We're still kind of refining some of the numbers. At ballpark, probably going to be in the 700 to maybe $1.5 million on the wastewater side. The one big unknown is the crossing of under Crosstown. So whenever we're working with TxDOT facility, it's kind of unknown the shape of the line, or if a bore could be needed, something like that. So the cost, we're not certain on that particular aspect. So that we're still, hopefully, if the board is amenable, we'll have a better estimate on what that might cost next meeting. And of course, with this wastewater work, you would, given the ordinance, there'll be some level of street repair work that might be needed, and we're still working with our publics group to figure out exactly maybe what that looks like, because all these will have new cuts in new taps into the single-family homes, and so there'll be quite a bit of tapping going on and lots of cutting of the street. We did also look at other infrastructure. The water line's in relatively decent shape. Stormwater actually goes north up 19th Street, and because of the Harbor Bridge project, they've corrected a lot of drainage issues. If you remember, Leopard Street used to be flood really bad, and so that has been corrected, and that would kind of bog down this neighborhood. Was kind of a as a funneling effect to come back here, and so this neighborhood used to have some issues. We've been told that the Harbor Bridge improvements should help that, and this neighborhood should actually be in decent shape or better shape now because of those improvements. So of course that's the proposal here for infrastructure on this site. We do have some other concepts. Of course, new potential affordable housing projects. We have one that was recently done as an example, the Alma at Greenwood. Unfortunately, that project didn't move forward. The developer is still looking at the site, so it's not completely, not going to move forward, but it's a different project at this point. The parameters, the land use, and different things are just completely different. Another option, if the board want to consider, we could look into homebuyer down payment and closing cost assistance, and then some rehab of existing affordable housing here in our community. We have a lot of that, and so not necessarily in the greatest of shapes, but these are 3 other potential concepts that we could explore further. But we do recommend that, that first one would be something we could have back to the board and kind of put in place. These homes We'll move, we think, fairly quickly. Once if the project is approved, the tax credit, that apartment project should move fairly quickly, and then we'll see some home construction, hopefully as early as the late summer, early fall. So we'll have,
What's the anticipated cost per dwelling on a single family in this
I
project?
think we had as low as about 150, 160, up through about 220, I think, between the 4 different builders. They had a range, I think it was about 1,000 through about 1,500 or 1,600. Probably no garages like this. You see Thanksgiving homes as a few in this area. I think they're about that range, that 1,300 square foot, no garage or anything like that.
The construction costs, or that 150 to 220, that's just construction costs as the lots are being provided to the.
Yeah, the lots were provided to the applicants at $10, but they did have affordability measures that were put in place. And so they have to, they can't sell the house for, it's capped, I think, at $250 would be the highest. And then the rents were also capped at a certain level as well. If most of them would be selling, there is, one of the developers does have a rental as part of their business model as well. And so they agreed to keep the rents at a certain level.
And what is the performance timeline that they have to meet?
I think it's 10 years. Yes, 10 years.
Before the second, no, for them to get the second takedown of lots?
No, they had to, I think it was 24 months, they had to have the C of Os in place. We did allow one extension, so if they had, say, for example, the 6 lots, they had to build on those 6 lots and get C of Os in a certain period of time, that 24 month with a possible extension. If they did that, then they could move, then get those second group of lots. And if they don't meet that, then all those lots get thrown back into what we're calling a tranche 3. And then at that point, it's whoever finishes all of their lots can then come one at a time and grab from that tranche 3. So it was very performance-based in order to get the homes finished quickly.
So does the clock start after the major infrastructure improvements are completed?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
We didn't tie anything
Okay.
into this.
So they could do taps, await the new lines?
Yeah, unfortunately, there probably is going to be a situation where they are tapping the old line, and then we would just have to,
I see how you-
as a normal procedure in our pipe bursting process for wastewater, we would have to deal with that. And that's it. And that, the timing, it'd be great if it was perfect, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's definitely going to be some houses that tap the existing system.
Right,
before
because
we
even
get
if
to
the
it.
money is available tomorrow, you've still got to bid the wastewater project and all that, yeah.
Correct.
And Dan, just for clarification, so while we are requesting monies to do the infrastructure, the project is not dependent on the infrastructure, but to better serve the new construction and the new houses, that is why we are asking for consideration of those infrastructure projects. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, sorry I didn't make that point. Yeah, the project's going forward regardless, but we just felt like throwing in infrastructure dollars at this would only support and improve that situation with the number of taps and volume that may come now from that apartment project. We just felt it was appropriate to replace that line a little bit sooner than later, just because of the age.
Well, if I was a normal developer trying to do on Greenfield, a new project like this, you would be responsible for those lines, and then you would have to put that into the cost of the lot.
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, we're bringing down the cost of the houses if we decided to do this, because we're not having them have to make that investment.
Eventually, the lots are free.
Yeah, including new infrastructure, new major infrastructure.
Yeah, in this situation with the infill lots, historically, we have not made the developers replace or enhance the lines. And so that would fall onto the city. Basically, the ratepayer would be picking up.
Right, that's why I was asking at a greenfield type of site, the developer would be responsible for those.
Yes.
If there were no lines there today.
Correct.
And that's the question I was going to ask. So as far as the infrastructure improvements, that's not on the developer, right?
No.
That's the discussion we're having. So like on new developments right now, what's the average cost per square foot? Like if you go buy a house that's, that doesn't get any incentives or anything like that. From my understanding, it's about 200, between 180 and 220 a square foot.
Yeah, it sounds high for.
For the retail price?
Yeah. So if we're looking at a residence, an affordable residence that's 1,000 square feet, and you're selling it for, almost 200.
Yeah, I would
Summer,
say
yeah.
That's kind of
retail is right now around 200 a foot, and I've seen as low with new construction is down to 145 a foot, and that's with the developer paying for the lots.
Yeah.
So I would agree, I think this is
Yeah.
a little bit high in the price point if the lots are 100% free.
Yeah.
And that's for comparable sizing housing. I'm seeing that 145 in a 1,200 to 1,800 square foot product. So, with again, them purchasing the lots. So,
That's including the lots in that 145. Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like it's a little bit high, but.
so yeah, I would expect if the land was
given
given for $10 and all the,
infrastructure.
700 to 1.5 million in improvements, that these numbers would be lower.
Well, I think majority of the homes, I'd said 1,000. I think majority that, from calling from the table, is probably about 1,200 or 1,300 to that 1,500 square foot. So probably most aren't going to be 1,000. So I don't know if that helps the math at all, but.
Yeah, but she's saying their price point that they're getting is 145 for
No.
about 1,200. Well,
I've seen anywhere on the market currently for new construction from 145 to 200 plus. But the lowest I've seen for new construction, including lots, is 145 on the market.
with lots.
And that includes the cost of the lot. So if we're talking 1,000 to 1,600, starting at 150, I'd say that seems high.
Do I understand, though, that the council has already approved this agreement for the development themselves, and that all you're bringing forward to us is, would we entertain participation in the wastewater and needed infrastructure improvement?
Correct. Yeah, council has approved the agreements with all 5 developers to convey the property. And so now this is just one option, or we felt, that was an eligible item through type B, and we felt it would be appropriate. We're doing a lot of kind of targeting this area, a lot of supporting of this area, and we felt it was just one more thing we could do to kind of enhance and improve this area.
And I think it could be a very good project. I just think the dollar for the homes, the price point for the homes needs to be lower if the land is completely provided for and the improvements are being funded. That's my concern with it.
So this is not brought to us as a motion today. It's just for discussion purposes. Obviously, we haven't had an easy time getting this money to work. So, and I would mention the one thing you said was something about a homeowner buy-down or assistance program, and we haven't had any luck with that. I mean, we dribble out a little bit of 2 a year. I mean, it just, for whatever reason, it didn't seem to work. What we had talked about was, well, what if we helped with some of the development fees and all that? That hasn't seemed to work. So we're kind of having a hard time figuring out how to make this money produce affordable houses.
And this will help. That one of the things that we're seeing, we have a down payment assistance program as well, and one of the issues we're having, we have demand for it, we have people that want to do it, but we just don't have enough houses that they qualify in that window of cost. And so this project actually helps with that, because it actually is providing houses in a market where they can purchase at the price that they need it to be. And so we're hopeful some of the down payment assistance will be used in this neighborhood.
So the options that you've listed, the Lamar Elementary project, and then the other options that don't have any detail, which one gives the biggest bang for the buck?
Well, I mean, this project, of course, the infrastructure, the project is happening. I think this now becomes a question, is type B proposal, or at some point the city is going to have to replace these utilities at some point in the future, and then it becomes utility rate money that pays for it. And then, of course, the new projects, I think that's a good one where we could, like this is one of the, not first, but this is a pretty good project that the city was able to work with another entity, get property. I think we have surplus property across the city, not only the city, the ISDs, some of the colleges have property. I think we could maybe run this model and do something similar somewhere else. So I think new project and new infill development is something I'd like to explore a little bit further too. Rehabbing, we know we have a lot of structures that are in bad shape out there, so having rehab is also pretty good, but that doesn't necessarily add new units, but it does make them more safe and better access for folks, to accessibility, those types of things. But I think this and the new projects are probably where we would lean towards of the four that we've kind of discussed.
On my part, I'd be in favor of pursuing this because we have very few options. And this one's going to get done. Anyway.
Lisa,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
the question that I have is the price per home would be $145,000, Diane? Somewhere around there?
I think
The cost, right?
he said 150 to 220, I believe, is
Yes,
what you said?
he said
If you build 42 units there worth around that value, you're moving those houses in between the homes that are valued there in the neighborhood from anywhere from 25 to 45,000. Now, what's going to happen if those houses are built and people do move in, the taxes are going to raise on the people that are living there right now.
Yeah.
So how do they feel? Has there been a survey going around the neighborhood as to how they feel about homes being built at that amount?
We did have a public meeting, and we have reached out to a lot of the neighbors, and so they are excited. We got support from the neighborhood. The apartment project is going to be working too with the neighborhood. Maybe there's folks that are in the neighborhood that could maybe even move into that senior living facility, or not senior living, senior apartments. But that is a concern that we have as far as, the gentrification of the neighborhood and watching the values, and that's something we're going to monitor. And there are cities that do struggle with that. Of course, go up to San Antonio, some of the neighborhoods just outside the downtown, properties 4 or 5x of what they were 10 years ago. So it's something we're going to monitor. We're hopeful that, the people that are in their homes, their taxes should be kind of froze, or most of them won't see dramatic increases. But it is definitely something that we've talked about in our department, and something that we'll monitor, because we don't want to push people out.
Yeah, it's hard to, but I mean, monitoring it doesn't, the reality happens, you can say, well, it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they have something, I guess, that is of higher value, and like he says, if they're over 65, their value is frozen right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are some protections in place. So if it's a homesteaded lot, if they are over 65, then their taxes are frozen. They will not go up. The dollar amount does not fluctuate.
As long as they're alive.
Exactly.
Goes to their dependents.
Yeah.
But now it can't increase over a certain percentage.
It's 10. Yeah. So, and then as long as it's a homesteaded, also the tax value cannot increase more than 10% per year. So your appraised values can expand, but your taxable value can only expand up to 10% if it's a homestead.
Only if the market doesn't go up.
No, it's a tax cap. So your appraised value can fluctuate more than 10%, but your taxable value can only increase up to 10% per year.
Your value is essentially frozen at the time you turn 65.
No, for anybody with a homestead.
It passed in the Texas
Yeah,
state
but I mean,
legislature
even before
this
with
past year. I believe.
anybody that was living there that's 65 already has their value.
Exactly.
Right.
So the city has the tax freeze. As a matter of fact, the city actually passed a higher exemption for over 65. So a lot of those tax ceilings will be reset this year. But in addition, and it's across the state of Texas, any house that is a homestead, their taxable value cannot increase more than 10% per year. The appraised value can, but the taxable value cannot, and you never get that difference back. It's only a 10% freeze.
So if they move into the senior and they owned a house, that house on fair market could be worth more money to them, which I'm sure they're hoping it will be.
Yeah.
And so they can
Yeah.
profit from the.
But the people who choose to stay in their house and have
Exactly,
their
are protected.
homestead, their value cannot increase more than 10% year over year.
Their taxable value.
Yeah, their taxable value.
The market value can.
The market value,
Yeah,
yes,
market can,
but-
but the taxable value cannot.
What their value that their taxes are based on cannot increase more than 10%.
So do you have any idea how much in that area is rental right now? Did you look at that, Dan, at all?
I had it, I don't recall, but that was a number we'd looked at. I don't want to guess.
Right. No, if you kind of took that neighborhood, what percentage is already rental property? Yeah. It might be higher than you think. It's not single family. I mean,
I think it's definitely higher than the city average for sure, but.
yeah, a lot of it is already in the rental market, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So I guess you're going to be bringing this board forward specifics?
Yeah, we'll have, like I said, we're working with CCW on the exact number, but I think it's going to be in that $700 to $1 million range. We do have that one issue they wanted to kind of flush out a little bit further, what it will take to actually cross under Crosstown. And that could be, depending on the requirement, could be significantly more, but we hope to have that by July. So we'll have a pretty good number to present.
So anything that we did not fund, assuming we were to fund it, it would go back into the overall capital needs of the wastewater department. And that means the cost would be shared among all ratepayers for that capital improvement. Is that?
Yeah, just kind of where this particular project would land on their priority list. And it wasn't imminent.
But there is existing utility access there.
Oh, yes.
They could tap in.
Yeah.
But this would just be an improvement to what is already there.
Yeah, the current line, one's 1940, one's 1920s. And so
And there's clay.
clay lines. Yeah.
There's
awaiting collapse.
Yeah, and I think
there's
that's some of the
clay
concern is
everywhere.
that now, especially with the apartment complex, there is going to be more of a demand on those pipes. And so they are in place. It won't prevent the project from moving forward, but this is a good investment to help support that project. Since we will have more use in that area, especially with the multifamily, it's a denser development. And so there will be more activity within the lines.
With the single-family residences, are those already zoned RS, I'm assuming 4.5, given the units for the amount of land?
Yeah, the zoning's in place, and in fact, a lot of these lots qualify for what we have a non-conforming lot status. So these lots were platted long before zoning even
75
existed.
foot lots.
Yeah, 25 footers by, some are 100, some I think are 125. But yeah, these all qualify under that provision with our ordinance for infill areas. And so they're all ready to go.
I think when this comes forward, I think we'd like to see, what the price point of the homes are that meets this program's requirements, as well as the square footage is, because I think right now that gives me a little heartburn over where they're at, given what we're seeing out there, but that would be good information to have when this comes forward.
Sure.
So I have one other question that's related to this, because when we first did this, one of the things about doing the type B was the idea that the HUD requirements can be fairly restrictive, and it goes back to the definition of affordable, as I recall. And I think a lot of people that were working on getting this money passed thought that one way we might improve what had been done in type A is to not have quite that same HUD definition in terms of income levels on this. I had heard that maybe y'all have reconsidered whether that us just using the word affordable in the authorization, it meant that we had to meet the HUD requirements.
Jennifer Buxton, Assistant Director, Planning and Community Development. It is the state law that specifically references a federal regulation. The federal regulation sets the income limits and the rent limits if you're going to do rental, and the purchase price limits if you're going to do home buyer. So if you want to get away from, say, the 80% income limit, then it would require a change to the state law.
Okay. Is that constitutional, or is that just regulatory?
It's within the statute for type B.
Regulatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, unfortunately, per state law, we cannot change what affordable means, because the affordable piece of it refers to the federal.
Thank you. But we could change the state law.
If there's, yes.
It's happened before. Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. McGinn, wherever you are. It's good to know y'all are working on this. I think we've all been a little bit like, what's happening with this money? We want to see something happening. Okay, there's discussion of updates for Type B guidelines. I assume you're going to do that, Ms.
Yes. So you should have a handout in front of you. Unfortunately, when the book was printed, the red line didn't save. Sometimes we have that challenge when we convert those documents. So this is in response to, we've had some different programs, some projects that have come forward. We found that there was some inconsistency between the Type B policies and the policies that we use for some of our other economic development incentives. And then we found that we wanted to put some clarifying language. So if you go to page number 5, the first suggested edit is here. We had some projects come forward that we wanted to, a lot of what we have within this policy is that it is focused on new, expanded, or modernized businesses. And so that is clearly defined within our definitions. And we have within the Type B, there's I think it's section number 10 that talks about and all other projects that are allowed under state law. And so we wanted to add language that says that really the projects should focus on capital investments in new facilities or improvements to existing facilities for the purpose of modernization or expansion. So that is consistent with our other defined programs. But like I said, we had some questions and some programs come forward that were more of a remodel type program. It did not expand a footprint. It did not provide modernization as modernization is defined, and it did not create a new business. And so we felt like that this was good. We wanted this clarifying language in here for those other projects that didn't fit under one of these defined projects. In addition to that, there was nothing across our economic development policies that said you could they had a maximum amount of incentives that you can receive amongst multiple sources. And so in addition, there is language being proposed that we would cap the total incentive across all programs at a 30% of the total project investment. That is consistent with what we have within our TERS number 3, and our TERS number 4 is that 30, kind of that guide of 30%. And so we felt like this was important to include within here. And then on page 11, under subsection 12, speaking about the application and section D, this is where there was an inconsistency between how we handled TERS incentives and how we handled the Type B incentives. And so the Type B incentives were allowed to begin construction after the submittal of the application, not necessarily the approval of the incentive. Within our TERS, we hold our developers to the standard of that construction can't start until the incentive is actually approved by the board. And so this language has been modified to indicate that construction could not start on the project until the incentive is approved, not after application for the incentive. So those are the three specific ones that are being proposed right now. I think this is something, these are just kind of more of a stopgap right now to make sure that we have consistent policies. And then we would like to bring these forward to the board along with the EDC for the board to review in total. There have been no, these are basically the same procedures from 2018. And so I know that there has been not shifting priorities, but different focuses. And so we want to come back and bring these back for more review at a later date.
So I have a couple of concerns real quickly. Sorry I didn't get a chance to get back to you, but
That's okay.
One of them is that the lack of specificity on what constitutes incentives, what is considered to be a city incentive. And one of my concerns about the TERS is it's an amount, some of which is city money, but some of which is other taxing entities' money.
Okay.
So I just want y'all to think through that, because are we only capturing what that city amount is, as opposed to what the percentage might be for Del Mar or whoever the other taxing entities are?
So we within the TERS, we don't separate it out between who the money comes from.
But what I'm saying is this language says city incentives. It doesn't say the TERS.
Because the TERS are considered created by the city, so they are a city incentive, even though the other.
I'm just promising you're getting yourself into.
Well, we can
just
say
think through this.
Okay, so we can
maybe be specific about TERS if that's really the incentive program. You know what I mean? Because then we get into a fight about what does it mean.
Okay, so we could include just more specifics about including
what
TERS,
programs,
380 agreements, anything that would be offered by the city.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, yeah, well, or specifically, I mean, we can always amend these. If there's a new incentive program that comes up,
Yes.
bring it back and we'll add that. But
Yes.
why not do the ones that you're talking about?
Okay, we can definitely do that.
So, and then on the issue of beginning, so y'all have a different application process, and I guess my question is, sometimes people may, in the real development world, you may want to stage these things, and I'm just kind of concerned that now we are saying, okay, you can't have started construction, or you can't have started what you're doing, really, until
It's approved.
our application is totally done.
So I think the
and
challenge, at least from the city side, the challenge we have is that, economic development is but for. And so you would not do this project but for this incentive. And so if construction is started before the incentive is approved, it makes it harder to really prove that but for, because you now are moving forward that project. This project, your project can go to development services. You can start through the permitting process. You can do a lot of things up to that point, but actually when you start basically moving dirt, then it makes it harder to prove the but for.
But in this specific case that brought this to all of our attention, they were willing to go forward with the base of their project.
Yes.
And it was.
And this was
whether
an
they
aspect of
added
it. Yeah.
Something on, and I just want everybody to think about it. I don't really care, but the question is, okay, are we going to have this other amenity that is a public amenity or not? And so, sure, they could go ahead and build whatever they were going to build. The question is, were they going to add this extra thing? And I'm not saying I know the answer to this. I'm just saying it's something for folks to think
Yeah.
through.
Like I said, with our other ones, we've kind of taken the stance of, it makes it a clear delineation. I mean, if the board is not in support of that, we can definitely look at alternative language on it. But, it does, and we did see some of that case with the project that has brought this forward, is there was a question of, well, they're going to do it anyway. And I understand your point. This was very unique in the fact that this was one aspect of that project that would have been done a different way if the incentive had not been put in place. But I think it also creates that, and this is just in my opinion, it can create a gray area. But we will definitely.
Because people didn't understand that there were different rules and different programs.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But we had different rules than the other program had. I mean, at the same time with your rooftop program, which is a great program, a grant program, if somebody had already started construction of something and they suddenly decided they wanted to put a rooftop on there, you would say no, because you've already started construction. Is that correct? Under TERS.
If it was new construction, yes. I mean, if they were doing.
You would have had to build that, you would have had to say in the very beginning, I'm going to put a rooftop bar.
Yes.
Or it wouldn't have been qualified.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and yeah.
So
yes,
all I'm trying to get at is the pros and cons of this approach.
Yes.
That's all I'm trying to do.
Sure.
So, any other comments, questions?
I guess my question is just on the alteration side. I mean, so what if they start any kind of demolition or any site work? Would that
usually site work, because you've got three different permits. You have a demo permit, a site work permit, and then you have your construction permit. And so what we have done on other projects is demo is not counted because we normally don't incentivize for demos. So demo is something totally separate. Site work can be, there are programs across the state that say site work is your beginning of your construction. We haven't really utilized that. We've been primarily at the beginning of the permitting for construction. So that's
Well, then the project that we funded met that requirement because they had done demo, but they hadn't done any
They had begun some site work, yeah.
site work. But
Yeah.
you're saying site work doesn't count. It's just when they actually go to construction of a structure and that.
Actually, they went to construction and they issued the construction permits on this, the one that we're talking about, were issued in November. And the incentive was not actually approved until January. So they had already,
By the council. It was approved by us in November
development agreement wasn't until January.
because it has to go to the council.
No, it was within the Type A board. You
Was it
heard it in November. We discussed it again in December, and then development agreement
Yeah, I mean,
was.
the timing of some of these just gets really in your way, because it takes us so long sometimes to move. But anyway, it's just something for y'all to think through and
Well, timing adds cost if you're,
Huh?
timing adds cost if
It
you're sitting
does.
on a project.
waiting.
So then are you having to ask for more from economic development if you're having to wait for it?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's ultimately up to
Especially when
the.
You have no control of when it gets to our agenda or, the
Yeah, I
ways
think
to
if
get-
there were
yeah.
some guidelines on that.
Anyway, it's just something to think through. Go, sir.
Part of this conversation is from the banking standpoint, in a construction loan, you can't get a good title commitment if you can do demolition, but site work is where title companies start saying, don't push dirt around until you have your lien filed. So I think there's some similarities here that maybe we ought to.
Think about it. Good.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are important to this committee. Anyway, okay. So
Okay.
we're going to consider that and bring it back at some point.
Yes, yeah, and so if there are those comments or additional wording that you, or language that you're interested in, please send it over and we'll incorporate it and then bring it back for action in July, more discussion and action in July.
Thank you.
Sure.
We're moving on to the next item, which is the presentation on the 24-25 budget.
Okay. If we can bring the presentation up. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the first presentation for the fiscal year 25 budget. We will have presentations in June and then again in July, where the board at that point will approve the recommendation. Then it goes to City Council to incorporate in the city budget, and then is ultimately approved by City Council in the beginning of September. So going through this is our economic development. So going on the columns from left to right, we're starting out with where we were at the beginning of fiscal year, or at the end of fiscal year 23, then the original budget in 24, what the amended budget was in 24, what we are estimating to spend in 24, and then the proposed budget in fiscal year 25. So this slide shows you the beginning fund balance and then what our total revenues are, what the total expenditures are, and then the estimated ending fund balance. We'll go into each of these line items in more detail as we progress through the presentation. Next slide. So then looking at the revenues, so for sales tax, again, starting with the original, the actuals in fiscal year 23, moving into the budget in 24, where we think we're going to end the year in 24, and then the proposed for 25. The first line is our sales taxes, and so this is based off of a trending on where we think we're going to end the fiscal year 24, and then what is being budgeted for in fiscal year 25. And then again, with the interest in investment income, this is based off of what we estimate our fund balances to be and where the interest rates are headed for the revenues. Next slide, please. Then going into the proposed expenses. So for, again, going from left to right with our actuals from 23, our budgeted amounts and actuals in 24, our estimates in 24, and then proposed in 25. So the top line is what we say for economic development. That is our general economic development line. One thing we still have in here, and we are going to bring back for more conversation in July, is the position, that $150,000 for the position that we had talked about to be funded from Type B to help out with development services. We've had some challenges getting that job description together, and so we want to bring that forward for more discussion in July. Moving into the major and business incentives, and we'll go into more detail on this. These are our projects that we have that we are committed to, that we are estimated that we will be paying on in 25. The small business projects, so those are the small business contracts that we have with the services through Del Mar, the internship programs, and through the LIFT fund. And again, we'll go into more detail on these. Administration, the Type B incentives, which actually is the incentive for the botanical gardens, that's in a separate line item, and then the administrative cost that is transferred to the general fund. Next slide, please. So there are 3 proposed projects that we are bringing forward for consideration by the Type B board. The first one is the Bear Lane project. So this is a commercial street that is Bear Lane. And we are asking for design fees for the street and the stormwater. It is $2.3 million. That would prepare us to be able to do the design for that street. And then the construction could be either funded from an alternative source when the design is completed, or be included in the bond in 26. But this would get us forward. This is a street that does carry a lot of traffic and is in need of repair. The second is $2 million for the Texas State Aquarium. They are purchasing additional land over on North Beach for parking, especially with the bridge coming down. They're going to need additional parking as that construction of that demo is happening. So this would be participating with the Texas State Aquarium to help offset some of the cost of the construction of that parking lot. And then the third is HVAC improvements at the Harbor Playhouse. So this is one where now we have the Museum of Art, the History and Science Museum, the Art Museum, and the Harbor Playhouse is part of the combined chiller system that is attached to the American Bank Center. And so we have utilized the seawall funding to be able to decouple the art museum. We are requesting funding to be able to decouple the Science and History Museum, and this would be the third one. This is something that is a cultural asset similar to the Ritz, where we allowed for spending money there. And so this would be $1.3 million to be able to fund an independent HVAC system for the Playhouse and decouple it from the American Bank Center. And so those are the proposed projects that are outside of the commitments that are already in place, along with the contracts that we're bringing forward for consideration by the Type B board from the economic development funding.
There is a construction going on Bear Lane. Does that include this one here?
I don't believe so. Neiman, can you speak? I don't know, or Ratna, can y'all speak to that?
I don't believe so, sir. We could definitely look into that. But just to provide a little more detail regarding the Bear Lane project, what we are is requesting design fees for Bear Lane, but there's discussions that Bear Lane just happens to be the corridor that the RTA has a very large center on. The RTA has graciously applied for a grant to repair the road, and they're asking for the city to partner with them to get that corridor fixed. So if authorized to pay for the design fees, we're going to realize that return on investment, because we'll be able to leverage that grant funding that the RTA is applying for.
Well, the Bear Lane is blocked right now, and there is a construction going on. I was just wondering.
Yeah, and I can look into that. I'll text our inspectors and find out what's going on Bear Lane. But I just definitely wanted to make sure you all understood that this is actually leveraging an opportunity to leverage external funding to fix, one of the major corridors in the city.
So I'm a little confused. Is the 2.3 coming out of the street funds?
No, this would be out of the economic development funds.
But then there's an additional 1.6 out of the street for Bear Lane?
No, the 2.3, no. So we actually have, this would take the place of the 1.6, or it would supplement the 1.6. So we had asked for funding in '25, possibly for the 1.6 for the Bear Lane. This would take the place of that and then utilize the street funds for possibly another project.
So I guess what's driving the difference between?
The 1.6 was just what was going to be remaining in that fund, and so we assigned it to Bear Lane. But this would fund the whole design of the Bear Lane instead of just the 1.6 million, which we would not be able to accomplish the full design with that.
And that financial gap may be as a result of now we're including the stormwater improvements into it as well.
Okay.
Making sure that we're taking care of the utilities and doing the project correctly.
Especially when we're talking about design fees, since those are typically a percentage of the overall cost of the project, I think it would be good for us to get an estimate of what the entire scope of the project
Sure, we can
costs
definitely do
are.
that.
So to make sure that they're kind of in line with where those should
I think
be.
it was what,
I
I think
can't
about
believe this.
27
Is this
million.
Is this a $20 million project?
I think it's about 27 million.
How far on Bear Lane? What's the limits?
And let me introduce Ratna Potamutu. I'm sure you
Hi,
all,
Ratna.
she's the Assistant Director of Engineering, and she does the estimation for our street projects.
It's a lot of miles.
Hello, I think the limits are from Joe Muir to all the way to the SPRD drive, which is 358.
From where to where?
Joe Muir.
Mueller?
Joe Muir.
Mueller, yeah.
Yeah, all the
Out
way
off
to
of Saratoga? Yes.
Yes, all the way to SPRD 358, yes.
The 358. So it goes through a lot of farmland out there?
There is a lot of farmland, and we are proposing concrete streets because it's in the industrial area. And there's, right now, we have ditch section road. There's no underground storm drainage, no sidewalks, anything. So we're proposing sidewalk on one side of the street, and we'll look into the stormwater design, how we can accomplish that, and then go with concrete streets because of the industrial nature.
So most of that industrial, though, is only like a quarter of what you're doing. I mean, it's from the industrial district and where the RTA is towards 358.
Yes, but we will build the whole road as well.
Go into the vacant land, I mean, the agricultural land. Does anybody have any idea of any development plans out with that?
No.
Okay.
So we just,
Okay. And the aquarium, it's just to build a parking lot?
So it's participate with them. The aquarium would be buying the land. Do you want to go ahead and?
Yes, so TxDOT have reached out to the Texas State Aquarium and advised them of the fact that once the new bridge comes down, the parking lot that's currently existing is in TxDOT right-of-way, and therefore the aquarium that they are not going to be guaranteed to keep that parking lot after the bridge is removed, because there's going to be a lot of different governing agencies fighting over that right-of-way, and TxDOT is probably going to go to the port. It might go to the city. We don't know, but we do know that it can't be promised or committed to the Texas State Aquarium. So the Texas State Aquarium is exercising some foresight in ensuring that they do have the parking that they need to continue to support their patronage to the aquarium. And this is not unprecedented. The city has partnered with the Texas State Aquarium before with different improvements.
Pretty good bond package went to them.
Yes, ma'am. And that's how we actually got the Wildlife Center built. It was through, a partnership with the city.
Yeah, the rescue.
And we're looking to continue that partnership and assist them in this
So the other
situation.
entities vying for that land are obviously the county and the port?
Yeah, it's going to be
I mean,
it's going to be a
right?
big fight. It's going to be the county, the port. The city's going to throw their hat in.
Anybody talk to the county and the port about saying, yes, the aquarium can keep their property?
Not yet. Conversations regarding that right away hasn't been had yet. I anticipate that it's going to be very detailed.
I would ask
discussion.
that conversation occur before we put money in our budget for that.
Well, those conversations are basically above my pay grade, and it's going to be a long
Above
time.
mine.
I don't anticipate that those conversations taking place for a while. So if we do want to allow the Texas State Aquarium to be proactive, then we really need to address something now and then try to.
So they're going to go ahead and build this parking, not knowing whether they can keep their existing parking. Is that where you're
Well,
saying?
they've been told that they can't. They've been told that they can't.
Yeah,
And-
during the demo, they are in need of additional parking anyway. They're having some challenges trying to fit within their footprint that they have right now between their employees and between the visitors. And so this was I think even if they are able to maintain after the demolition, because during demolition, they will not have access to that parking. So even after demolition, if they are able to move back into that space, they are in need of additional parking. And so this would not only just be used during the demolition, but would be used moving forward also.
I love the Texas State Aquarium, but I sure hate to build parking lots. I know it's needed down there. I mean, I know that Lexington struggles too.
Yeah.
With parking.
And the thing is that, the Texas State Aquarium is a huge economic generator. There's over 500,000 visitors a year that come into that. And so this is just, the city has had a history of participating with them from different sources. And we felt like that this was, something that we wanted to bring forward for consideration from the board.
Is this project eligible for hotel motel?
I'm not sure. We'll have to look and see. I'm not sure if it is or not.
Is at least a partnership kind of a...
Exactly.
Because they also get the revenue off of that, which is fine. But the aquarium uses that, I assume.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not sure. I'll have to double check. My first inclination is to say no, it's not eligible for HOT because of the type of infrastructure this is, but we'll double check and see.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question, Summer?
Would this $2 million, would it fit within that 30% of the total project investment that we discussed on the guidelines earlier?
No, it would probably be more than that, yes.
So, okay.
And then I have a question on that HVAC. I know there was a desire, but is there any particular reason that the Harbor Playhouse shouldn't just stay connected to the convention center?
So we continue to have issues with that. It is an antiquated system. We continue to have issues with it. We are wanting to move forward. We are in the process of replacing the chillers within the convention center side because it is fed from the convention center side, not from the arena side. And so it is a more efficient system if we're not coupled with those other facilities.
And I understand that about some of the others because their demands are very, can be quite, but this facility has pretty minor demands. And they fluctuate from very little to, so I just was kind of curious why not keep that one coupled.
Elsie, can you provide a little bit more detail on that?
Good afternoon, Madam President. Elsie Borsted, Assistant Director of Office of Economic Development. The current system that we have, the chilled water loop system, will need to be completely replaced.
Sure.
And by that I mean we're going to do away with that old system that we had. I think Jeff had spoken about it in one of the board meetings in the past.
You're still going to have a chiller.
We would have a chiller, but no longer the chilled loop, which is currently...
This isn't a loop. This is just one pipe.
No, it's part of a whole system that supplies the Harbor Playhouse, the Art Museum, and the Science Museum is connected on that loop system to the American Bank Center. So the moment that it gets deactivated, removed, a new chiller system is in place, essentially they would have no AC, no cooled air. So, and they don't have building controls. They would affect other humidification. So it's a big.
I understand they need air conditioning. I'm not disputing.
No. Granted, I just want to make sure and I guess give some background into the capital program for FY25 for the American Bank Center does include potentially getting a new system in place. But before that could be removed, shut down, and install a new one, you need to make whole all these other facilities so they can be prepared and on their own and offline before you disconnect the American Bank Center, because that will be detrimental to their operations.
So there's two more, right? What are you going to do about the Science Museum?
We're in the process of also identifying potential sources. So one of those sources could potentially be through the Type A Seawall Fund, or if not, we would have to put it out there for potentially another funding stream within the city.
keep mentioning American Bank Center. Are you talking about the arena or are you talking about the convention?
The convention center, the Selena, are the ones that are connected to that loop system. The arena, it was built in standalone.
Separate.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I may, real quick, just as, I guess I know this is FY25, but as time gets closer, we can see like detail of how these numbers were derived. Like we were talking earlier about like Berlin, it's about a mile and a half roadway for like 27 million. It's excessive.
It's a lot.
But,
Yeah, and we can-
I know the need when it comes to drainage and all that, it gets expensive.
Yeah. And we can bring that in more detail with, we wanted to introduce the concepts. If there's a desire to move forward with more information on that, then we'll bring a more detailed view next during the July meeting.
Appreciate it.
So what I'm not seeing in this list that you proposed is the one thing that I heard come to me, and it is this idea of communications.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
These were just more of the infrastructure projects. We have additional recommendations as we walk through this.
Thank you.
So then moving through, next slide, please. Then moving through the major business incentives. So we do have $5,111,000, and that includes the first year payment for the next sports complex, the fiscal year 25 portion of the Texas A&M drone program, the $1 million for the Sinatra House, and then the $2 million for the Homewood Suites.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. And then moving into our small business projects. So we have the Texas A&M internship program would remain at $150,000. The Del Mar College internship would be increased from the $115,000 up to $140,000. And as you saw today from today's item, they have increased demands on it. The Apex or TPAC would be increased from 105 to 110. The Del Mar College CRC program would remain the same. The Del Mar College SBDC program would remain the same. The LIFT fund actually would be reduced from the $200,000 to the $150,000. And I know that we've had some challenge. I believe that LIFT fund has been having some challenges utilizing all of the funding that they have. And so I believe, I don't know if Randy, if you want to give any more information on that they did are asking for, we're recommending a reduced amount there.
Yeah, so we talked to LIFT Fund last month, requesting what they were going to ask for 25. And they're just having issues right now with people wanting to borrow money in the climate that they're in. Laura's really trying to do a lot of outreach, talking to the development services, leaving information there for people wanting to expand or wanting to just get their business going. So that's where we're at right now. And they don't want to just, hey, let's just take $200,000 every year, talking about, after COVID, and you still had the numbers high and we weren't hitting those back then. So let's bring it back down. And they're just taking that proactive approach. Let's bring it back down. Let's get this going again and see maybe next year we go back up to 200,000.
Okay. Just one comment. I have gotten some really good feedback on the cyber center and that the training is.
Yes, we've had just great feedback on that. We went to a lunch and learn. Actually, I was there. City's ED team was there as well, and you just really got to see what was going on at the local level and how this is very much needed. And they had some actual real life examples of people that were taken advantage of, unfortunately, and you had it was a room full of small business owners there, learning. Program manager was there, got to meet. Of course, Ann was there, Dan was there, so it was a great turnout on the one I went to earlier this year. Of course, they weren't able to start up until January is when the agreement kicks in. So when they hired that position and really get up and go in those first few months. So now they've really kind of hit the ground running and going forward. And as you see the request for next year.
So I hope you're capturing some comments, some, comments from the businesses that participate so that we can use those to sort of say how great it was and encourage other people to utilize it.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and talking about the cyber one, they are asking for an additional $10,000. They started out with 130, going up to 140. So overall, the overall request from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25 is reduced slightly. We did have a couple that were increased, but with the $50,000 reduction in what the LIFT fund is requesting, we actually are coming in a lower amount than what we did in the fiscal year 24. So any questions on that? Okay.
Just kind of a housekeeping item. The Del Mar, you've got it 140, but I think we just increased it to 130.
Yes, but they're requesting 140 for
next year.
Oh,
next year.
next year.
They
Yeah,
actually-
thank you.
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, it's still, yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, next slide. Then we have the 89,000 for the South Texas Botanical Gardens that hopefully will be paid out in 25. Next slide, please. And so then moving into some of the different proposed projects on the operational side. So one is a request for $50,000 for small business events and programming. So we had wonderful response after the governor's small business summit that we did. And so a lot of the feedback we heard was, are y'all going to do these more often? And so while we can't always get the governor's office to sponsor those, we talked to them and said, you know what, yes, we can do more of that programming on an annual basis for our smaller businesses, for educational, for networking, for things like that. So we are requesting $50,000 to be able to put on those programs, to be able to provide speakers, to be able to provide food, provide those costs to be able to hold those events. Any questions? Okay. And then the next one is for some small business data software. We've been able to maintain software helping with sales tax and with property taxes, but we would like to do a subscription for specifically for Placer AI, which provides a lot of good data to be able to see patterns and traffic and things like that, to be able to help out not only those that we the help, but within the city also, looking at being able to provide more of that analytical data as we move through and help the small businesses with development, expansion, retention, things like that. And so this is not the full cost. This would be a portion of the cost that would be for Type B. The remainder of the cost would be coming out of the Economic Development Department, along with some of the other TERSs also. Any questions on that? The next slide is a request for $50,000 for public relations and marketing. This would allow us to be able to work with, I know that we are bringing on a marketing firm that is helping us on other efforts. This would be able to help somebody help us with identifying how better to market the Type B, be able to also partner with our small business entities to be able to help market them. I know that the programs through Del Mar, the SBDC and things like that aren't allowed to use their budgets for marketing. And so be able to get more of that message out there to be able to broaden that reach. That's some of the comments that we continue to get, is that people don't know about these programs. And so we're hoping to expand that footprint and expand that knowledge and advertising for these programs and the resources that we have available.
So this may be a great idea. I'm not saying it is, but this was even somewhat more basic, which is just something that shows whether it's housed, so it can be housed at the EDC, so whether it can be housed at the city, that just says, here are some programs that you may be eligible for. This is not about SBDIC, it's not about all those. It's just basically, if you have a business and you are looking for investment from this area, here's the programs. And I just don't know if we've kind of gotten down now into, something else.
So we already have a lot of that on our website. I mean, we have.
You cannot find it.
I mean, that's a whole nother problem. And we are in the process of, I mean, the city is having their website redesigned. So we're hoping that we will have more accessibility, but a lot of that information is already out there. And so how do it, I mean, and we're running across that issue across the city is how do we let people know? And that is a challenge on a lot of things that we do. And that's one of the things that we are trying to work pivoting in engaging someone to help us with that messaging. And our thought behind this was this would allow us to have somebody help us with this. How do we need to be hitting social media? How do we need to be hitting marketing? How do we need to be hitting those type of things? Help us create a plan.
I think y'all are looking at this from a public, a general public point of view. And what I'm trying to say is if I'm a person that has a economic development project.
Sure.
I'm somewhat more sophisticated, let's say.
Yes.
I think it needs to be at the EDC because that's where I'm going to go look. I'm not going to try to find it at the city, maybe. I'm going to say, I need to go to the EDC and get it. I mean, I'm a major business coming in. I'm going to them, I think. So I'm just asking you all to think about how you work those two together. Nothing against this. But.
Okay. Okay.
By the way, that was a specific comment of a council member at a council meeting. How do I know? How do I find it?
So is that something that you feel that is not, that it's more of an effort versus a monetary?
I don't know. I'm not going to try to be expert on this, but I would ask you and the EDC to work together to see how you could figure out a way to get simple, easy information out about TERS, Type A or Type B, here's the landing page.
Our webpage has that information. We have a incentive page, and it's tied in with the city there. If TERS is
right, but if I go to your web, and I've done it, it's not popping at me. You know what I mean? Figure out some ways to pop it out there.
Okay.
To market it to those people who may be
interested in coming into Corpus Christi.
Exactly.
Contact here.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I mean, just, and maybe that is where you need the marketing professional to help you. I'm not saying that, but
and that's what, and it may, this is a kind of a placeholder, this would be, of course, anything that we would do would bring back to the board to make sure that y'all are okay with it. But like I said, I mean, this is something that it's not just this. I mean, we struggle across the city on all of our programs as how do people know about what we're doing, what we offer. And it is, it's a challenge in the environment that we're in right now, where you don't have consistent, not everybody watches the news, not everybody reads the newspaper, and we have to spread it across social media. We have to spread it across, where do it? And this is one of the things, like I said, we are recently engaging a marketing firm to help us with that, because we are, even though we have a communications department, even though they are very skilled at what they do, it continues to be a struggle on how do we get this information to the people who needs it.
It is definitely a struggle. I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I think an improvement to the web page of where to go.
Yeah.
But also we've got colleges with great communications programs, and so maybe that's an internship opportunity on the social media side. But I don't know that it's a $50,000 full time, in my opinion, if we had those two fixes.
I think they're just asking for consulting assistance.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that I just don't know that there's so many different forms of social media.
Yes.
So, I mean, I can spin stuff out on one or two platforms, but that doesn't mean that that's getting.
Exactly.
Nor does it mean that a major business person is going to be looking at that platform for that kind of.
I think it's the web page, in my opinion, which is the most important.
And I think getting it Googled out.
Yeah.
Getting yourself where if I type in, what incentives are available in Corpus Christi, it pops at me where to go.
Yeah. And that's where, the challenge we have at our website is we do have 29 lines of business. And so we can't, it's hard, what do you have on your front page? There's a constant conflict.
Water conservation right now.
Exactly. There's a lot of competition for that front page. And so, we continue to struggle with how do we do that.
And that's why I said the EDC, I think that's kind of more the...
And, and they've got it on their webpage that put, we cross-reference our webpage with all of our partners. We cross-reference with the EDC, they cross-reference with us, and we're still having issues trying to do that. So how do we do that better?
Okay.
That was the intention behind this.
Anything else? Are we done?
We just have housing, which we've already talked about some of the things that we want to bring forward. So we will bring that forward for more discussion in July, just to get through this. And then we've talked about the streets revenue. That also, we already have commitments against that.
Yeah, that's for the streets.
So is there anything that any of the board members would like to see them explore that you're not seeing as an initiative for the next year? Okay. Just want to check. Do you have a new economic development director?
Yes, we do. Arturo Marquez it's actually his first day today, so he gets to get thrown right into it. Arturo, do you want to come up and just say, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you want to come up and say a couple of words before we move into our Type A meeting.
No, it's all right. I'm kind of used to getting put on the spot. My previous position. Good evening, President, members of this board. My name is Arturo Marquez. I'm the new Economic Development Director. I just recently moved from Eagle Pass. Prior to that, I was in the county of El Paso, and before that, I was living in Arizona. So I've kind of made my way down the border, finally up to Corpus Christi.
You finally got to the coast.
I finally got to the coast. Finally made it. I'm really excited. As Heather, sorry. Let's skip there. As Heather mentioned, it is my first day. I'm really excited. I've just met the team. I've kind of gone through orientation today, and I've, listening to you guys go through the decision making. It's really exciting to be here, to be part of the team. So I'm going to be taking it all in for the next few weeks, and hopefully, start making some recommendations and, kind of give some ideas, some proposals to you guys. But other than that, I look forward to working with the team, the very, very capable people. I look forward to working with the partners. I've yet to meet you, so I'll meet you in a second. But yeah, I'm really excited, and honestly, I'm really happy that I was given the opportunity to start here in Corpus Christi. So
that's great. Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, with that, we can. If there's no
Do you
more
have
questions.
any other report?
No.
Okay. Okay, we beat the source. Okay, then the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Switch over and let's go. This one will be short. She says.
Oh my goodness.
That humming really is dulling. It's just right there all the whole time.
Just holler when you're ready.
Yeah, 150 to 220. So Lennar is selling their houses.
All right. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Type A Corporation, Business and Job Development Corporation to order. Ms. Huerta, would you please read the roll?
President Leah Oliveri.
Present.
Vice President Alan Wilson. Secretary Diana Summers.
Here.
Mark LaRue.
Present.
Jesus Jimenez.
Present.
Robert Themis. We do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here that would like to make public comment? All right, I don't see anyone. Ms. Huerta, have you received any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. With that, I don't believe we have any excused absences. Everybody was here. I need a motion. If there's no corrections, I need a motion and a second to approve the meeting.
Go forth.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting, the minutes of the prior meeting in May. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Same sign. The motion passes. With that, we'll turn to the financial report. We'll try to be pretty short.
Yes. We'll wait for that presentation to come up. There we go. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll begin with the Seawall Fund. So the financial position for the 7 months into April 30th, 2024, we did go into the year with a beginning fund balance of almost $21 million. Revenues year to date are $5.6 million. Expenditures year to date are $20.4 million, leaving us an ending fund balance of $6.1 million. Next slide. So I'm sorry about the small font on this. I know, but these are all the projects that are active right now. There's almost $70 million worth of projects that are being done out of the Seawall Fund, and of that, $21.7 million has been spent to date. I believe these are all in process, and there will be a few of these that will be closing out or are coming to completion. Next slide, please. So then moving into the Arena Fund, the Arena Fund began the year with a almost a $13.9 million fund balance. Revenues year to date are $5.7 million. Expenditures year to date are $5.1 million, leaving an ending fund balance as of April 30th of $14.4 million. Next slide. And then moving into the Economic Development Fund, so just a reminder that this fund is no longer receiving revenue. This revenue was taken over and turned into the Type B authorized by the voters. And so this is just, we're spending down the remainder of the funding in here. We did begin the beginning of the year with a fund balance of $780,000. Revenues year to date primarily from investments was $17 million. Expenditures year to date were $466,000, leaving an ending fund balance of $330,000. We do have an outstanding commitment of $26,000, and of that, we have $176,000 available for affordable housing with a fund balance of $127,000. Next slide, please. And so there is remaining funding. This was a refund from the Home Buyer Assistance Program that came back into there. Yes.
Can you go back to balance of 127,000? Can we throw a party?
No.
I'm sorry, what?
Can we throw a party?
Can you throw a party? We do have a recommendation for what we want to do with that. So
let's get rid of this.
So next slide, please. So actually go back one slide. So with this $16,000, we actually have affordable housing, I think of $176,000. One of the recommendations we're making is for the new budget year is that money is transferred from the Type A into the Type B affordable housing, and then we'll be able to just close this out. We're waiting we did have that commitment with the ALMA in here, and so with that being uncommitted, the recommendation is at the end of the fiscal year, we will just go ahead and transfer that funding, and it'll be available in Type B.
Or worst case, you could just do, if the legal department doesn't agree, worst case, we could just take the rest of that money and allocate it to the infield program we just talked about.
Yes,
right?
we could,
And then- and
yeah.
then we could
I think
just
it would be
clear
clean-
the book.
Exactly. It'd be cleaner if we just go ahead and put it over to type
over
B.
there, yeah,
And then we
right.
are because otherwise we have to hold it until it's actually spent.
Yeah.
And then, it's just a whole thing.
That would be
So our recommendation is we're going to go ahead to just transfer it over.
That before, hadn't we?
Yeah, I think we'd had, because of the commitment against the ALMA, we had to leave it there, but we are going to transfer it over now that commitment.
Yeah, we asked if we could just transfer the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Next slide, please. And so then for the major business, for economic development, we do have a commitment of $26,000 for Whataburger Field updates. We will have, I think, a remaining fund balance of a little over $100,000. What our recommendation is that we allocate that to additional improvements at Whataburger Field just to get rid of the last little bit of economic development funding. They're always needing additional funding for capital upgrades there. So we are working with Brady Ballard over there to give us a list of things that would meet that criteria, and that is what that's what we'll be recommending in the budget, is that we just allocate it towards Whataburger Field.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So looking at the sales tax revenue, we have collected $10.6 million year to date and are running over, so about $228,000 over what was budgeted in revenue this year.
And the majority of that money continues to come into the seawall fund?
No, it's equally split between the
It's
seawall and the arena.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, equally split between the
So
seawall and
I
the
just
arena.
I was trying to make the point that none of that is coming in for
Economic development.
housing, any of that.
Yeah, exactly. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions,
Very
I'm
much.
available to answer those.
All right, do we have a presentation now? Thank you, on the
Yes,
budget?
on the budget. So we'll bring that presentation up. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we'll start out with the seawall. As we just reviewed, we have significant fund balance. We have been spending that fund balance down. And so we're going from left to right. We start out with what was actuals for 23, what we budgeted for 24, what the amended budget is for 24, then what we estimate to spend against that amended budget, and then what are being proposed for 25. And we'll go into these numbers in more detail in the following slides. Next slide, please. So looking at the revenues, we will have a full year of collections for the revenues for the seawall. So we're estimating $9.1 million in revenues from sales tax, $179,000 from the interest and investment income, for a total of $9.3 million in revenue. Next slide. So looking at our proposed expenses, we do have the administration of $10,000, the transfer to general fund for administrative services of $152,000, the transfer to the seawall debt service of $2.8 million. So that, just a reminder, that debt will be paid off in 26. So we do have full debt payments of the seawall fund, and then we're recommending a transfer of $13.5 million over to the CIP fund, and we will review those in more detail in the following slides. Next slide, please. So then looking at the projects within the CIP fund. So the active projects right now we have is the Art Museum HVAC of $3.5 million, the flood wall upgrades at the Science Museum of $1.3 million, the McGee Beach breakwater of $560,000, the seawall capital repairs of $2 million. Those are the ongoing repairs. The boat haul out facility of $7.7 million, and the Cooper's Boater facility of $4.8 million. And some of these will receive funding in fiscal year 25, in addition to what's already been funded. Next slide, please. So then we have the dredging, the People's Boardwalk of $4.1 million, the parking lot resurfacing on the L head of $865,000, replacement of A, B, C, D, and L piers of $17.4 million. The replacement of the finger piers that will receive funding in 26, and then construction in 27. And then we do have $6 million that is sitting in our reserve appropriation that it can be appropriated to any project. So total active projects of $48 million. Next slide. So then looking for additional funding in 25, or new projects in 25, we have the Museum of Science and History improvements of $265,000, and then the HVAC improvements of a little over $1 million. So this would be a new project for 25, and this would be the decoupling of the Science and History Museum AC from the major from the ABC Center.
Okay, but you just had that over in B.
No, that was for the Harbor Playhouse.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So remember, we have to get the 3 different facilities. So that one was for the Harbor Playhouse.
Why is that one? I thought that the Harbor Playhouse was 1.5. Why is that one more than, it's further, I mean, it's a bigger facility.
Every system or every building has different requirements. Some already have existing units that we might be able to reutilize, equipment that is. But the idea would be to start with design and then follow through with purchase of the equipment and then installation. Since these buildings are smaller in capacity than to the Convention Center and the Salina, those units are usually a little bit smaller in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, the Harbor Playhouse is a tiny little place.
Yes, but they don't have as much as the equipment as, say, some of these other buildings that are more robust that have different areas.
So there's also an additional $1.2 million that would be needed in 26. So the total project would be almost 2.5 million.
Yeah, this is only for the 25 fiscal year.
And the 1.35. The 1.35 for the harbor covers both.
All of it.
All of it, exactly.
Yes, within one FY, because it is smaller in comparison.
Smaller, yeah, exactly. So this is a bigger project.
Okay, I got it. We've gone into the HVAC. Okay, next.
So any questions on that?
Anything on this? Only thing I would comment, as I always do, is the one big unknown that we have not gotten a report on the assessment of the breakwater. And we await a report on that, and I think that's very critical to know about the overall seawall, even I mean, depending on what that number is.
Yeah.
It may be more important than some of these projects.
Okay. I'll follow up on the status of that.
Okay. Jeff has said it was, but I mean, we may not know that for a while.
Okay. And if it's something that we'll know before before the budget is adopted, it's always something that could be modified before it goes to council.
And you might just talk to him about even putting a placeholder in there for that one, because I just know that it's going to come back and say at the very least there needs to be some repair to the revetment. And
sure.
And it's not only subsiding maybe, but it's also got some.
Yeah, and I know that, yes, and so let me find out what the timing is on that. We can bring that back to you in July.
Thank you.
Sure. Next slide, please. So here is laid out by year. So the for fiscal year 25, we're looking at a total of 12.8 million, which would include the second year of funding for the dredging at the People's T Head. It would include basically the third year for the new People's Boardwalk repairs. I think second year of funding for the flood wall replacement at the Science and History Museum, or the Science Museum, a placeholder for the Harbor Point East Connectivity Project. That is a new project. We've talked about that along the way, and so this would be some money for design on that if that moves forward, and then the continued capital repairs at the seawall for a total of 12.85 million. That would be for fiscal year 25.
So didn't I read that the port got a grant for that area that they proposed to?
I am not sure. I'll have to, we'll
Yeah.
bring that forward back. I don't know if, I'll have to double check on that.
Because they had said they were going to pay for that, and then I saw they got, they got the money, I guess, out of, I don't know whether it was the settlement for the oil spill, or whether it was
Okay.
maybe they'd like to partner in and build this.
And I think this was, I know that the original 2.5 million was partnering with the port, but I don't know if maybe this would allow for them to participate at a higher level
Right,
with the grant.
right.
Yep. Okay, we will double check on that, and come back to you. So just correction, so this is what was proposed in fiscal year 24 that was going to be funded in 25, and then the next slide is actually what is going to be included in the funding for 25. So the new projects would be the Science and History Museum HVAC program. There are some differences in what was proposed for some of the projects. And then we are going to utilize about $4.5 million that is in that reserve. Remember, I said that there's about $6 million sitting in that reserve. And so we are going to allocate about $4.5 million to these projects, which would leave a total transfer of $13.5 million coming out of the operating, or out of the fund balance for fiscal year 25.
So what does that leave as a balance in reserves? I'm confused now.
So remember,
Is
we
it
got
still the 6 million?
We have two different reserves. So that $6 million is sitting over in the CIP fund. That was when we closed. So that would leave us about 1.5 million over in the CIP fund, but we still have a fund balance over in the operating side. So that would just use up that money that's sitting there in the CIP fund.
Got it.
Yeah, and that was just from projects closing out and things like that. So we just needed to assign that to a project, and so that's what we're proposing to do, is reduce that by 4.5 million. Which then lessens the transfer from the CIP fund into from the seawall fund.
Seawall into the CIP.
Exactly. And so with all of this, we would have a proposed ending fund balance in the seawall fund of about $1 million after the transfers of these funds.
I'm still confused about how, go back, please. Go back one more.
One more.
Or you showed us a sheet that had the balance, I thought.
Keep going back.
Mm-hmm.
I think you wanted to go to slide number 2. This one right here?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the ending fund balance is 904.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then if you go to slide number 4.
So that's all the money we have left, assuming there's not balances here, for any repairs that are needed for the breakwater.
Yes. And then the seawall fund will receive another year of
after that,
about 6 months of revenue. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the sales tax would not expire until March of 26. So it would receive another half of year of sales tax going into that fund.
Well, it's up for y'all to think about, but, we seem to have been winnowing our way over into HVAC and away from the seawall. So I think it's very critical for us to know what that demand might be.
Okay.
Huh?
That breakwater number.
Yeah. That's one of the last pieces of the puzzle. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have any comments? Anything they'd like to see considered in this?
On the seawall side? Because then we'll move into the arena side. Anything? Okay. So then moving to slide number 11. So looking at the overview of the arena facility. So the fiscal year 25 is the last year for collections for sales tax in the arena facility fund. That will expire in September of 25. So it does receive a full 12 months worth of revenue into the arena facility fund. So again, going from left to right, these are our 23 actuals, the 24 original budget, the 24 amended budget, the fiscal year 24 estimated totals, and then the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. So then we'll go into revenues on the next slide. So revenues are estimated at 9.1 million for sales tax, 173,000 for investments, with a total of 9.3 million in revenue for the next year. Next slide. So then looking at the expenses, so you have the arena administration, the transfer to general fund for administrative services, and then we're proposing to transfer $13 million into the arena CIP, and then $4.1 million into the visitor facility fund. And we'll go into more detail in the following slides on those. So that would be a total of $17.39 million in expenses. So then looking at the transfer into the arena facility fund, a lot of these are, these are some of the projects that are either ongoing and we need second year funding on them, or they are new ones that have been identified. We did do a full facilities assessment, and so these are based off of what came forward, those priority items. So within fiscal year 24, we did have the arena access control phase 3, which will be completed, the exterior improvements, which are still in process. We started out with the life safety improvements of $250,000 in fiscal year 24, and we have $2.3 million proposed for fiscal year 25. And we'll go into more detail on those. The HVAC improvements, so we had $750,000 that was budgeted for 24, and then $2.4 million for fiscal year 25. The spotlight platform repair and improvements, there were $75,000 in fiscal year 24, and then $100,000 in fiscal year 25. And these were primarily phasing these out over the 2-year period. So then the new projects that are being proposed for fiscal year 25 is $4.5 million for the arena roof replacement. That would be the replacement of the whole roof. We do have numerous leaks and have water infiltration from the roof. The second project is $1 million for the fire alarm system upgrades. It is a dated system, and we do need to get those systems upgraded, not only the sensors, but the controls that are integrated in that system. And then the final project is $2.7 million for the area, the suite enhancements. Those have been partially spruced up. We have the terrace project that is coming to completion, and so this would be to redo the suites on that level too. So that would be a total of $13 million from the arena fund for the fiscal year 25.
How many suites are in the arena?
11. There's actually a total of 12. And this would be improvements on, really significant improvements on 11 of those. One of them has already been redone recently, and so there will be just a slight updates on that one, but the other ones have not been updated in many years or ever. Yeah.
And so what type of improvements are we talking about?
So it would include, if you want to, Elsie, if you want to.
Good afternoon, Elsie Borgstead again. The suites have, like Heather mentioned, have not been updated in a while, other than one that was done maybe about 2 years ago. Some of the items that we've seen, as Heather mentioned, is roof leaks, or a pipe recently burst as well this year, and it caused damages in 3 of the suites. They got flooded, essentially completely flooded. It went from above the suites, there's a water line that goes through for the whole building, and it was corroded, and everything got flooded all the way down to the stage. And so this would help us with mechanical, with the sound system, with the hospitality side does not have room there for the catering. So when people order food, there's not enough areas for placement. But also the aesthetics and furniture, FF&E, and then also, like I mentioned, electrical and IT, so that doesn't work. The suite needs to be connected to our electrical and lighting system for the building controls, so when there's an event going on, people cannot be out there in the suites with the lights on. They have to actually shut down, and so that would help us also to control those mechanisms that right now really doesn't exist. So it goes beyond just cosmetic work. Well, it's really good because we need to be able to provide that as well. But it enhance the customer experience, both from a building perspective, but also from the forward-facing.
So I hear you saying that it is more, with catering and all that, it is more than just 11 suites.
The number of rooms are still the same. I think at one point, the 2 suites got turned into 1, which is where the American Bank, which is the title holder.
You're talking about the catering with kitchens within the suites themselves?
Yeah, so anytime you rent a suite, you order catering or food delivered.
Right.
And there's just not the room there, and that is standard for today's environment.
The surfaces to be able to put to
Actual table area.
Yeah.
The table area.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not the kitchen. So basically,
It's just a little wonky there.
It's $245,000
$45,000 a suite.
Yes.
That just seems like a lot.
Yeah,
We're building affordable housing for that. I mean,
so we can
it's like a
only
lot.
use arena, as you know, funding for arena expenses, right? But it goes beyond cosmetic, like I said. There is building and equipment, so it goes above the ceiling on each suite that needs to be updated. Security features as well, like I said, electrical, plumbing, and then you have the customer experience levels. The areas are dark, they're dated, they haven't been updated since the arena that was constructed. So it just needs to be brought up to today's industry standards.
I guess we're talking about how you put it down as a project, maybe not saying it's more than just.
I think having a detail of like what's going into that, the mechanical
Absolutely.
side. I mean, when you talk about a suite update, it sounds like the interior cosmetics of the suite.
Exactly.
And we're talking about surfaces, that's just a countertop. I don't know what countertops we're putting in, but $245,000 a suite, I think we need to kind of know
We can build a
what's-
house for that.
Yes.
That's what we're saying.
And understand also,
Sell a house for that.
unfortunately, it is something you have to work with, but it is higher expenses, the square footage for
Commercial's
commercial
yeah,
grade.
I understand.
Yeah.
But it just seems awfully high.
So, I mean, this is going to be basically a gut. I mean, the suites are going to be gutted and then rebuilt in essence. So it's not just some paint and some countertops, and it is basically reconfiguring because the way
The layout.
the layout of each suite will be reconfigured. It's going to be gutted, redone, and so it is a very substantial upgrade. Electrical is going to be upgraded, things like that.
Yeah, I think also just kind of I understand like commercial's higher in the cost, but maybe just some square footages of what we're doing.
Sure.
Kind of get an idea of what the cost per square foot is, that I think would be helpful
Absolutely.
as well.
Yeah.
What is the
And-
lifespan of these remodels on the suites?
Oh,
Like, when was
well,
the
it
last
hasn't
time
been
it's done?
touched in 20 years.
20 years.
So it's quite high. It is meant to be for long-lasting
Okay.
commercial use, that is. But we can definitely come back to the board with more details. So we do have, for every project that we do to the board and to council and to the public, we have to prepare a CIP sheet. So that's where we put justification and a narrative about some of those expenditures.
Yeah, I think the useful life of it would be helpful as well.
Mr. Temez.
How much money is the arena budgeted for maintenance?
So the projects that you see here before you today is only for the arena. We actually have a whole another section for the convention, the Selena, that is going before City Council for approval and executive leadership. But in the long-range plan, we also have a whole another list of projects that it's over $22.5 million worth of projects that are currently identified through a consultant engineer that did a full facility assessment and a gap analysis. And as a result, like I said, we have the projects that we identified in the immediate range. That means that are urgent and mostly revolved around deferred maintenance, large equipment that needs to be replaced or improved, or roof improvements or replacement, that is. And those remain unfunded at this point until we identify the funding source.
I think he had a different question.
On a yearly basis, how much is budgeted for the maintenance?
For maintenance of the whole arena?
On the arena only?
Yeah, on the arena only, we have actually funding that we put in for this budget. I would say over $500,000 to $1 million is for maintenance improvements that come both from a year-to-year operational perspective from the OBG management team, and then in addition for extraordinary maintenance issues that happen throughout the year. I would say like recently we had a leak with the rain event that happened a few days ago. The arena actually got flooded. There was an old roof repair that was damaged by the storm, by the wind that is, and so we were able to tackle that. But proactive maintenance, preventive maintenance is being done in the arena. Now with the new management team that came in, they've been identifying more quarterly reviews, preventive maintenance agreements that did not exist before, or they're actually enforcing them more. So for elevators, escalators, fire, life safety, all those items are being reviewed yearly, and then, or that is monthly. And then in addition to that, myself and part of our team actually goes there and reviews the work that is being done by the management team for maintenance on a quarterly basis, along with our asset management team from the city. So there's money's being put in from operation, for capital, and then also from staff time.
Out of the 11 suites, how many are leased and how many are vacant?
They're all leased, where before it was only one. Now, with the new management team that has taken over, they've actually are all under lease and agreements.
Wow.
Yeah, there's actually a waiting list for entities that sometimes wish to lease them. And and by the way, I would like to clarify that all of those revenues that come out of leasing those suites actually gets put back into the operations, and those revenues stay within the fund so they can be utilized for operations and maintenance of the facility.
Okay, any other questions, points? Anything else? All right, with that, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Do you have any report?
I don't. We can go through the rest. We've got a couple more sheets, but we can talk about those in July if you'd like. I know we've kind of gone a little long today, so. Okay. No, I do not have an executive report.
Okay. Thank you. Y'all seen the other pages? Does anybody have any questions about those without going into any detail on them today?
Okay.
Thank you.
And what we'll try to do in July is that the budget will be the only, I think that's about the only thing, unless we have something come up, that'll be the only thing on the agenda, so we can focus primarily on the budget.
Sounds like a good idea. Thank you very much.
Sure.
With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much for sticking in, and thank the staff for all your answers and being there to help us understand this. We appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.